Hello! Welcome to my channel. My name is Brian, and a few weeks back, I released a video about why I am not trading in my Switch 1 when I buy the Switch 2, and why you shouldn't either. In the comments of that video, someone asked me if I could clarify what in the world Nintendo is talking about with their new Game Key cards. At first I thought I could respond to the comment with a quick answer, but the more I've read about it, the more complicated the issue has become, and I've seen a lot of very upset people out there. So today I would like to go through what we know so far about the Game Key cards, what exactly they are, how they affect the games you purchase, why people are so upset, and whether you should be upset about it too. Let's dive into it. What exactly are Game Key cards? Well, when you buy a video game, you have essentially two options, physical or digital. Do you want to go to a store, buy a case with a card inside with Super Mario Bros. Wonder on it? Or would you prefer to log into your Switch, go to the Wii Shop, and buy the digital version and download it to your system's hard drive? No box, no card, just a digital download. Either way, the game is the same, but with physical, like this one, the entire game is saved on this card. So you have to have the cartridge inserted into the system in order to play it. Since nothing's saved on the hard drive, it's all saved here. Digital games just need to be downloaded onto your system so you can have a bunch of games all ready to go, ready to play, and you can swap between them without having to swap out cartridges or anything. They just live right on the hard drive, like how I have Smash Brothers there. I can start that game right up even though no game cartridge is loaded into the system itself. It lives on the hard drive, digitally only. But now with Game Key cards, instead of just physical or digital, Nintendo is introducing a third option, a physical game cartridge tied to a digital-only game file. But what does that mean? It means that just like any physical game, like this one, you purchase a case with a physical game cartridge inside, and this little SD card looking thing, just like every other physical game, needs to be inserted into the system for you to play the game. But unlike any other physical game, the cartridge itself does not have the game loaded on it. All the cartridge will have is some digital key code that lets you download the digital version of the game onto your system. So just like any digital game, you will need space on your system to download the entire game, just like if you bought it from the digital eShop. But unlike the digital downloads from the eShop, you can't just swap between the games you've downloaded on your system. You will have to physically change the cartridge between any games that you bought with a Game Key card. The game will only play if it is both fully downloaded entirely onto your system and you have the cartridge physically inserted into the system. The two are permanently linked. And I'll admit, that sounds bad. Just describing it like that with no other context, it sounds like this is truly a bad thing. It's just a digital download with more steps that is somehow more inconvenient to play while still filling your hard drive. But I will say it's a bit more complicated than that, and I don't think that it's necessarily the doomsday awful situation that a lot of people think it is. And also, don't worry, it's not a random thing that you won't know until you've already bought the game and plugged it into your system. It is clearly labeled on the front of every box. Just make sure that if you see the big white box at the bottom, you read it to see if it is the full game or just the Game Key card. The main question is, why would they do this? Is it just so you can have a case on your shelf and another cartridge to carry around? I don't think so. The primary purpose that Nintendo intends for the game key cards is to solve a problem inherent to digital-only games, which is that they are permanently attached to your personal account and therefore can't be easily shared, given away, or sold. There's no doubt that game sharing has been a primary focus with the Switch 2 rollout. Over the last few months, they've announced 2 new features for both the Switch and the Switch 2 that make sharing games easier than it's ever been. For one, they added Game Share, a feature that allows you to share a game that you own with someone else who doesn't own it, so you two can play the game together. You just have to have the systems physically together. Open up Game Share on one, and it will load the game onto the other system, and the two of you will be able to jump into a game together. Game Share is a great feature for us, the customer, because you only have to buy one copy of a given game if you only intend on playing it together. The only caveat to it is the game won't work on the second Switch, the one that doesn't own the game, once you stop actively game sharing. I would imagine that means there will still be some game data on the Switch taking up space, but I would assume you can just delete that if you don't want it on there. The other feature they announced is their virtual game cartridges, another kind of confusing idea. Essentially, they are just a new way of classifying digital games, where they are pretending they are a physical cartridge in the virtual world. But aside from a fancy new term for digital games and a new way to access your digital library from your home screen, these virtual game cartridges can also be shared between 2 systems you own and loaned out to systems you don't own. For example, I own Super Smash Bros. As a digital game. I have it here in my virtual game cards. When I buy the Switch 2, I will be able to share it between the 2 systems whenever I want. I own both, I'm logged into both, so I can just eject the game from this system and insert it into the Switch 2, but it's just a fancy metaphorical switching of games. It's just an easy way to switch between 2 systems you own. But if my cousin comes over here and says, "Hey, I've always wanted to play Smash Brothers. Can I borrow it?" I can actually loan it to him for up to 2 weeks at a time. This is a first for Nintendo. Previously, games were tied to your account, but now games can be shared outside of that, though the game purchase itself will forever be tied to your account, which is why the loan is only for 2 weeks at a time. It will automatically bounce back to you if they haven't returned it already, and you'll have to reshare it every 2 weeks if you want them to be able to continue playing it. During any time you've loaned it out, you won't have access to the game on your system, just like if you let someone borrow your physical game cartridge. The game key cards are an extension of this game sharing system, but since the game is tied to a physical cartridge and not to your account, you can loan out the game indefinitely. No 2-week limit, no reconfirming with your account. They can hold on to it as long as they'd like. Further than that, this means you can not only lend it to others, you can sell it. In another first for Nintendo, you can finally sell a digital game that otherwise would have been stuck living in your account forever. But you may be saying, if you wanted to keep the option to sell a game open in the future, just buy the regular full game cartridge. Why would you want this? Well, out of the 15,000 games released for the Switch 1, a whole bunch of them were digital only. They never had a physical release. So those games only ever had the option to buy digitally and therefore own on your account forever. These game keycards allow a developer who would otherwise release a digital-only game to give you a physical cartridge that you could not only add to your physical collection if you're into that, but also sell it in the future or give it away. This is unquestionably an improvement over a specific alternative that we've seen over the years, which is to sell an empty box with a digital download code inside. No game cartridge, no nothing. It's just the download code for your eShop. So that is quite literally a digital download with extra steps. But where this would become a problem is if developers who otherwise wouldn't have gone digital only use this as an excuse to do so now. That would be a problem for several reasons, but before I get into those, why would a developer decide to release a key card instead of a full game if they are paying for the box, the card, the shipping, all of that? Why not just have the full game on there? Well, it comes down to the cartridges themselves. Even if you are not well versed in gaming technology, you are probably familiar with SD cards. They've come in different sizes and speeds for the last few decades. For the Switch 1, outside of the cartridges themselves, you could use a micro SD card to save your digital games on your system. It had to have a relatively high speed for a micro SD, but nothing too crazy. Pretty much a standard card from any brand would do. But for the Switch 2, while still accepting micro SD, it has to specifically be micro SD Express, which is a newer, faster version of micro SD. The Express cards can move data much faster than a standard micro SD, which is necessary when games become more complex, like they will be for the Switch 2. Something similar happened when people upgraded from the PS4 to the PS5. A standard hard drive could have been used to store your game library on the PlayStation 4, but the speed is not fast enough for the PlayStation 5 games. So on my PlayStation 5, I have my PS4 games on an external hard drive, and my PlayStation 5 games have to be on the internal, much faster SSD. Now, because Switch 2 games require the faster, newer microSD Express cards, we can assume that the Switch 2 game cartridges are similarly a faster, newer chip as well. And when things are faster and newer, they are going to be more expensive. If you want to buy a new 128 gigabyte SanDisk microSD Express card, it will cost you $50. That same card, in the highest quality standard microSD, also from SanDisk, would be $16. That is a 312% increase in price. Now, obviously, that price is for us, the customer, if we were to buy it from a store, not if we were a developer who would buy it wholesale directly from the manufacturer. But we can assume there is a similar leap in price between the Switch 1 and Switch 2 cards, even for developers. If you are a smaller developer, that increase could very well eat into your profits in a way that you can't afford. And a lot of indie games are a fraction of the size of first-party AAA games in terms of file size. And if the rumors are to be believed, 64 gigabytes is as small as Nintendo is offering cards for developers for the Switch 2. So if you're an indie developer and you have a 10 gigabyte game or even a 5 gigabyte sized game, does it really make sense to pay all of that extra money for a huge game cartridge when instead you could just stick to digital? The game keycards undoubtedly aren't the full 64 gigabyte microSD Express card. I highly doubt they are even Express cards at all, but far more likely they are cheap, standard microSD cards with a small amount of storage, since all they really need to hold is a digital key code and anti-piracy firewalls. So this would save indie developers money, which should mean that it keeps indie game prices down while still giving the option to share and sell the game in the future as if it were a physical copy. That would save us, the consumers, money in the long run, assuming it does indeed keep game prices from continuing to go up. In the short term, it is yet another price premium for us when we buy the Switch 2. Because it means that more games will likely need to be stored on the system itself. And yes, the Switch 2 does have a much bigger internal storage drive than the Switch 1, 256 gigabytes of storage instead of the original Switch's 32 gigabytes. A huge increase in storage, but the games have also increased in size. You will almost certainly need to buy a micro SD express card to fit future games, but I don't think you need it day one. Mario Kart World will only be 23.5 gigabytes, so don't feel like this is something you necessarily need to pre-order, but when the day comes that you do need to expand your storage, expect it to cost more than your old SD cards ever did. The one nice thing is that micro SD express cards should come down in price in time. Emphasis on should. They are brand new. So new that most sizes aren't even available yet. The Switch 2 can handle up to a 2 terabyte card, and yet there are no 2 terabyte cards to buy yet. Anytime you get a new type of storage, the price is through the roof. But in time, it comes down. How long that will take, who knows? But for us, the consumer, it will mean cheaper expanded storage, and for developers, it should mean a smaller cost to put a full game on a cartridge. But for now, that extra cost may well push more and more developers towards game key cards. Eventually, maybe they will re-release them fully on the card. I know there are some third-party companies that put full games on the cards, but fortunately, as of this moment, all main first-party Nintendo games will be fully on the cartridge, just like normal, and only a handful of third-party games are confirmed to be game key cards. But I would imagine that list will continue to grow with time, and if it becomes the norm, that would be a bad thing. For one, because of the storage issue, you would need a substantial micro SD express card or multiple for even a modest library of games if you were forced to have them all be digital downloads that you wanted to have readily available without having to re-download. The sooner you have to buy one of those micro SD express cards, the more expensive it will be. But for now, you can always delete, re-download to your heart's content. Obviously, download speeds and data caps will affect how quickly and how many times a month you can do that, but it is frankly just annoying more than it is a complete deal breaker. That is, for now. The other big concern when it comes to game key cards and digital games as a whole is how long will you actually be able to download it? Digital games have to be downloaded from Nintendo. They have to maintain that game data on a physical server somewhere, a server with enough speed and bandwidth for us to pull whenever we need to download a game. That's true for any digital content from any company in the world, whether you're buying or streaming. If the company were to go under, and if no other company bought their assets and continued to provide the services, it is possible for you to lose the ability to download digital content that you've purchased forever. That's true for games, that's true for music, for apps, for literally all digital content. Now, Nintendo is less likely to collapse than some other companies out there, but it isn't impossible in the future. Though I really don't think you need to worry about that. Some other company would buy them up and keep selling their games. A far more likely scenario, in fact, an inevitable scenario, is the shutting down of servers by Nintendo in the future. When that will be is more the question. All we can do at the moment is look to the past to see how Nintendo might handle this in the future. The Wii Shop channel launched with the Wii console itself on November 19th, 2006. You could buy and download games onto your console for the entire lifetime of the Wii and into the lifetime of the Wii U, as it rolled right into the Wii U's eShop. Despite the Wii being discontinued in 2013, the Wii Shop channel remained active and available to purchase and download digital content all the way until January 30th, 2019, when the channel was shut down for good. The Wii U's eShop remained active for just a few more years until it too shut down in March of 2023. Now you could look at that and say, 2006 to 2019, 13 years? That's pretty good. Or you could be saying, 13 years? I'm still playing my games from 30 years ago. 13 years is nothing. Which I would agree with. And so would Nintendo, because they may have shut down both the Wii Shop channel and the Wii U eShop, but you can still, to this day, download any purchases from either store onto your Wii or Wii U. They are still maintaining the servers for all Wii, Wii U, and 3DS purchases. You just can't buy new ones. So that's already pushing 20 years of Wii support. Assuming that Nintendo maintains that same model, we can be looking at decades of download support for these games. And even when they do shut down those servers, any downloads will still work offline just like they will on day one. They don't require account verification or online check-ins. They will work once downloaded, even if you turn off Wi-Fi for the next 100 years. So to me, based on Nintendo's own track record and the fact that you can just back it up yourself on an SD card, I really don't think you need to be worried about the servers being shut down. Not for decades. But it does speak to an issue that a lot of people don't fully appreciate about digital content. No digital content from any platform is guaranteed to be available forever. Not your iTunes library, not your Google library, not even your Kindle books. What's worse is, a lot of digital content has the potential to vanish even if the company and the servers are still up and running. Companies make their own contracts with publishers, developers, and studios that you are not privy to. And those contracts can say that customers can only download the content for so long or under specific conditions. We've all seen shows and movies constantly leaving our preferred streaming platforms, and that seems understandable because of the nature of streaming. We don't own the content, neither do they. But a lot of Kindle owners found themselves in a situation where books they purchased at full price to own were removed from their Kindles and accounts due to issues with Amazon's contracts with publishers. Same with some movies and shows over the years from iTunes libraries. So I do think it is justified to not view digital media as forever media. But the truth is, neither is physical media. 90s kids and above know well the deterioration of old VHS tapes. But did you know that DVDs have an expiration date as well? The coating on DVDs, Blu-rays, CDs deteriorates over time. They will eventually stop playing your movies, TV shows, and music, even if they never get a scratch on them. Vinyl records will eventually stop working. They have a much longer life than any digital media, but still, microscopic scratches from the record players, dust buildup, even just oxidization will eventually bring an end to even the most well-sought-after vinyl record. Outside of etching data into diamonds, no media we have today will last forever. The Switch cartridges may fade out in the same number of decades that the server is operational. It's possible that the servers will outlast the game cartridges. And that's ignoring the fact that the hardware won't last forever. The Switch has a battery with a lifetime measured in years, maybe decades. The internal hard drive will fail eventually. The power supply will fail eventually. The screen, the controllers, every piece of every console will eventually fail. So we really need to stop building the drama around a server potentially shutting down in a few decades when none of the Switch 2 ecosystem may last that long. Stick drift happened after like 2 weeks for some people, so who knows how long it'll last. Buy it knowing you'll get years of enjoyment out of it, probably decades if you swap out the battery at some point. And after that, any time is just a bonus. And at that point, it really only affects hardware enthusiasts, nostalgia seekers, and antique collectors, because we will have moved on to the next system after the next system after the next system by that point, and almost every good game will end up on it eventually. And the reality is, we are most likely in the final days of physical media, and most, if not all, media will be purely digital in the future. To be up in arms about it with Nintendo, but not be bothered by the Steam Deck, the Xbox Series S, the digital-only versions of the PS5 and PS5 Pro, would be just hating on Nintendo because you thought they were different, they were better than the others, or you just don't like Nintendo. But at the end of the day, they are, along with every publisher and developer in the world, a for-profit business, and they are going to make decisions to continue making profit. That's just capitalism. If more people bought digital-only games, we probably would only see a digital-only Switch 2 already. But since people still prefer physical, Sony's own PlayStation sales stats show there's a 60 to 80% physical over digital sales difference, we are still getting physical game cards. But as physically delivering projects around the world gets more and more expensive, at least for the moment from the tariffs, digital media will almost certainly grow into the preferred medium for developers. And hopefully it means that digital games are a different price point than physical. That to me would make it a win for us, even though I personally like physical games. As someone who has a lot of nostalgia for the games I played as a child and still play to this day, I can absolutely understand why the end of physical media would be a bummer for anyone. But like it or not, it's just the way the world's been moving. Nintendo has been a great holdout, and by all indication, they will continue to be. I think that these game key cards are a positive, if only as an alternative to dropping physical games entirely. I'm still going to get the Switch 2. I'm still going to buy games as they come, even if it's only available as a game key card. But you should make that call for yourself, based on your own budget and based on the value that you would personally get from it. Don't let anyone online guilt you for buying into the Switch 2, and don't let anyone online guilt you if you don't. If you are still here, thank you so much for sticking around. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and a subscribe. If it was helpful to you, or if you have any questions you want me to look into in the future, let me know in the comments below. Definitely go check out that previous video about trading in the Switch 1. It's another situation that's just not as black and white as it may seem on the surface. But that'll do it for this one. Until next time, peace.